Listen up, Bachelor Nation. I mean, there is a show you've got to go check out. It's now at the Apollo Theater. Bachelor, the unauthorized parody musical. We have two of the stars, Christopher Wayland and Cecilia Iole. I mean, thank you so much for joining me today. I mean, let's talk a little bit about the musical. Christopher, go ahead. You're playing the Bachelor. I mean, what an iconic role to play.
Iconic and bland at the same time. At least my version of him, you know?
Is there anyone that you took as a inspiration as far as like, I want to model after this or these scenarios, or, tell us a little bit about the making of this character?
No, I thought about it. I thought, like, do I want to make this like one specific Bachelor? And I think really because he's unnamed in the show that it was best to just keep him generic, sort of a mashup of all of them. I tried to throw in a few Claytonisms. Clayton's the current Bachelor. I tried to throw in a few here and there. Just for those who are currently watching the show.
And then, Cecilia, let's talk a little bit about Lauren. I mean, if you think of all the names, it's Ashley, it's Lauren, it's Christina, I mean, there's so many names that are just like iconic with the shows. You play one of the Laurens. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I do play the Virgin in the show. There's one every season. So what's really fun about that is I feel like I got to take little bits and pieces from every season and all the different contestants. So it's been really fun being like, okay, well, here's a little bit of Madison, and here's a little bit of Kelly, and here's a little bit of Lauren, and putting it all together to make this character. It's been really fun.
One of the things with The Bachelor is that I never anticipate wanting to watch a season, but you always just start and then you get sucked in for like the 3 hour, season premiere. And then you're just stuck. You're like, well, I got to find out, what happens. Christopher, have you been caught in one of those marathons in a particular season?
I will confess that before this process, I was not a true Bachelor Nation fan. I caught episodes here and there. I've had friends who've had it on and I've watched it, and I thought, oh, this is an interesting show. But then when I started actually like sitting down to watch it for research, absolutely. You just get sucked into that wormhole of episode after episode after episode.
What about for you, Cecilia?
I've actually been a huge Bachelor fan. I think I started watching it 10 years ago, and I've barely missed a season. So when I got the script, I was like, I have to be in this. I just love it. And I've had Bachelor watch parties. I've had friends over and we drink wine and we watch The Bachelor every single season. So I actually love the show. It's so funny being in this musical.
So you played the Virgin on the show. We won't say, what happens with your story arc, but as far as like who you root for when you're watching the show, I mean, we have the villain, we have the Virgin, we have the person who has their sob story. There's the crazy, there's so many different personalities. Who do you root for? Who are you watching for at the beginning of the season?
I think I always root for the girl who's way too smart to be there. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you are so smart and talented and you could do so many other things. Like, why are you on the show? But then I'm always drawn into their stories. And that is the person I always end up rooting for. And a little spoiler alert, we do have one of those contestants in our show. So she's the one that I always root for.
That is amazing. Christopher, let's talk a little bit because they do poke a little bit of fun at Colton's season with him jumping over the fence. And I remember when I was watching that, I was like, usually they have trouble making up their mind or they go back and forth. No one's ever just like left. And of course they're like, find out next week. You had to wait a whole week to find out what happened. Tell us a little bit about putting that into the script and the audience reaction for that storyline.
Our brilliant writer, Rochelle Meese, she is a true diehard Bachelor fan. And so there are breadcrumbs from so many seasons peppered in. And that is our Colton moment. It was funny watching that moment. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so dramatic. And it gets teased all season long. And so like that, in our play, we have that sort of that moment teased all play long until it happens. And then when it happens, it's as stupid as possible because we're a parody.
Because I did see you in the Love Actually parody, which I love. And I'm so happy that you're part of this production as well, too.
Oh, thanks.
It's wonderful. Cecilia, I do want to ask you, as far as when you come out and all the women come out and they're doing their numbers, telling about their stories. I mean, the audience members are interacting, they're cheering for people, they're booing for people, they're yelling things out. What's it like for that moment when you come out and when you're kind of telling your storyline and seeing, hearing all the people's reactions?
Oh, I love it. It just gives us so much energy. You're right. It does feel like people are screaming at their TV screens, but they're in the theater. And I just think that is so fun. I mean, especially the villain song, people get so into that. Or, you hear the sob stories of all the characters and people are hooting and hollering and you just feel like people are picking sides and rooting for their favorite to go to the end. And it's really fun. I don't know. It gives me so much energy. I think it gives our whole cast so much energy.
Now you do go from the beginning process of like introducing everybody to the fantasy suites to meeting the parents to the final two. Is there, Christopher? I'll go ahead and ask you first. Is there one of those that like when as you're in your research when you're watching the shows, like this is the pivotal moment? Is it fantasy suite? Is it meeting the parents? Is it the very beginning? Is it a certain fight between the women?
I'm really partial to the entrances. I just love to see how wacky and kooky they get, and like how many different characters are going to come out at the beginning of the season. Truly, that's my favorite part because you never get that many people at one time. So that's like the biggest version of the cast of the show, and I love that.
What about for you, Cecilia?
I think after the final rose, I think the show does such a good job of really making you feel like you just watched this whole season, and then there we sit with the Bachelor and the host, and that's always a part of the show that I look forward to. So I think the show does such a great job of wrapping it all up in that way. So I think that's my favorite part.
Well, it used to be, I guess maybe for some of the geekier people, I'll go ahead and raise my hand on that, was like when you would watch Star Wars or Star Trek, that's the one where it was like, here's this universe and here's all these extended universes and you knew all the characters. And somehow that slipped into reality TV because there's so many seasons of The Bachelor. There's Bachelor in Paradise. People are dating other people from other seasons. So you really have to know your stuff and whatnot on all this, everything Bachelor related.
Yeah, Christopher talked about our amazing writer Rochelle earlier, and it has just been so much fun to talk to her about Bachelor stuff because she is such a huge fan and she does know all the ins and the outs, and she knows who did what on this season, and it's just been so fun hearing how she wrote this show and what seasons she took everything from, and to really talk to like a true diehard Bachelor fan, but someone who can joke about it too and make fun of all the different things in the show that need to be poked fun at. And she does a great job of that. So it's been so fun hearing her perspective on the entire Bachelor Nation as a whole.
Yeah, no, enjoyed the show, and I can just see all the different personalities and all the different parts of all the different seasons coming together. I guess maybe a serious question to kind of ask both of you. Christopher, I'll go ahead and start with you. As far as like when you told people you were going to be part of the show, how do you think The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, Bachelor in Paradise has shaped dating over the past, I guess let's go ahead and say decade, because these shows are so popular, people watch them so much. Do you think it's kind of shaped the way people look at love?
I really do, actually. And I think, we sort of live in a culture of brevity and immediacy, and everybody wants the thing right now. And everybody thinks that, it's all love at first sight. It's got to happen, in an instant. And we fall so hard, so fast. But I think what our script does brilliantly is, The Bachelor has become such a cultural touch point that even if you're not familiar with the show at all, if you've never seen it before, you still recognize all the tropes and characters and types written into it, because, those have become so prevalent in so much of our culture.
Oh, exactly. These are all the things that we talk about when we're out with our friends of like, you'll never guess, who I was out with, or so-and-so tells you a crazy dating story. And Cecilia, since you mentioned, you watched the show with your friends and you've been a fan for a long time, do you and your friends, kind of compare as far as like, oh my, we had the crazy one and someone told me their sob story. Is this kind of the conversations that happened along you were watching the show?
Yeah, I think actually what's so fun about being able to watch the show is you're like, oh, I'm so glad my dating life is not as dramatic as what is happening on the TV screen. So, it's kind of those things you're like, okay, I'm doing something right. It's not that wild. But it has been fun to talk to my friends about it. Like, hey, you know how you used to come over to my house and we'd watch The Bachelor? Well, now I'm in a parody musical, so you can come see it.
Go ahead and see it. Well, this is fantastic. People have a chance to go and check you out through February 13th. Bachelor, the Unauthorized Parody Musical at the Apollo Theater, 2550 North Lincoln. ApolloChicago.com is where you can go ahead and get those tickets. And I can't wait to see you both on stage again soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.